Today I'm going to show you a twist on a classic block. It's actually a disappearing style block, but a lot of people don't really call it a disappearing block. What you start out with first is you're going to have two squares. And so these squares are 9.5 inches square. The first thing I need to do for this is I need to turn these into two equal HSTs or half square triangles. And so to do that, I'm going to put these on top of each other. And what I do to make it so these layers don't shift, I use a starch-like spray. And it needs to be a pretty firm hold type of a starch. So this one is the Magic Premium Crafting Spray. I find that this one works perfectly fine. If it was a bigger thing, like when I did fat quarters that I put on top of each other, then I would want more hold than this, and I would go for an actual fabric stiffener in this case. And so after I have done that with those two squares, I will have this. And so I don't want to totally take these apart. I want to actually have these stay together because it will actually keep them stabilized. But they are staying together pretty well. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to mark my center diagonal. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch 1/4 of an inch on each side of this diagonal. As you can see here, like these layers are still kind of stuck together, but that spray, since it's not as strong as the fabric stiffener spray, it actually comes apart. What's nice about it is it keeps those layers together, so I don't need a walking foot, I don't need paper as a stabilizer, and it keeps it together just long enough for me to get it through the sewing machine, everything's stable, nothing's shifting. And so what I will do next is I will go ahead and I am going to press these. All right, so I have both of these pressed. I want to make sure that I have a 9-inch. I mean, this should be pretty close to a 9-inch. What I want to do is I want to line this up on that diagonal on this cutting ruler. Okay, so I've got that diagonal matching the diagonal between those two pieces. And then I'm just going to do that. Okay. And then I'm going to do that same thing again, trying to be careful that I have it on that diagonal. So here we go. That looks good. Okay. Yeah, that looks really good. Okay, so now I have these trimmed to 9 inches square, and this is very, very important. I need to have these with the diagonals going either to each other or away from each other, just either way. But I do not want to have the diagonals going the same direction because that is not going to make it so that this block actually turns out the way that I want. These are 9. This is where the initial part of the disappearing starts. I am going to cut these into 4 segments. And so 9 divided by 4 is 2 1/4. All right, I have the first one. And so I have these like this, and my next step is I need 2 squares that are 2 1/4 inches. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the diagonal across this, and this is what is going to become my stitching line. And so I need one for this block, and I will need the other one for that block. Then what I want to do is, since I have this one going up this direction, then I need to have this going the opposite way to that. I'm going to place that right onto there. And then I could pen it, but I find that penning can kind of shift layers a little bit more than if I just simply use these binding clips. I'm going to go ahead and just have the binding clips kind of holding that in place. And then I'm going to go ahead and sew this on the seam there. All right, so now we have those stitched onto the bottoms of these. And so it's pretty simple. I can just eyeball that and just cut it away. Or you can line up a ruler and use the rotary cutter. That's fine as well. And then next I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press these open really fast. So here we are. I have them nice and pressed open. Doesn't look like much right now. You might have already guessed, based on the original cutting here, that I am doing a Delectable Mountains block. This is a modification of the Delectable Mountains block that I'm calling a Southwest Mountains block. The way that you would want to arrange this is that you're going to have it like this, and this, and this. And then you stitch these all together as one unit. And then the same thing over here. So we're going to move all of those like that. You can stitch all of those together. And when you do that, it is going to look like this. And so these are the blocks all nice and stitched. So this is the way it looks. And as you can see, this looks like definitely a Southwest motif. It's a very basic version of a Navajo storm pattern. So this is one of the things that would encompass that. And the reason why it's a storm pattern is because these jagged edges are kind of like lightning. It represents lightning, and it does represent mountains. And so that's very appropriate to taking a classic block, the Delectable Mountains, and converting it into something that fits in the Southwest. You could sew it together this way. You could sew it together this way. I have some examples here where I have sewn them together this way. And then to make it look even more like the completed storm pattern, so you would put these two together and it would look like this. And then there's another variation. This is actually something that I was playing around with before I landed onto this particular pattern. If you take these and instead of having it go opposite, you actually have it go the same way. And so the advantage to that is you don't even have to cut these apart before you do that. And so I made one up where I did exactly that. This is how that one turned out. And this, when I was looking through at examples of the storm pattern, this would also work as well. I hope that this inspires you to take a different look at a classic pattern and see that you can put a different twist on it. There's all kinds of things that you can do with that pattern. You could put like a stripe through it, and that's going to change it and make it look interesting. See you next time.